Welcome back to the Cap Report. This will be my UFC 259 aftermath video. As in Cap Report fashion, this is a very late video. But if you're still watching it, I appreciate that. I just want to get my thoughts out on the card, even though it is like 2 weeks ago at this point. And once again, I did not have enough time to edit this video, so I'm going to just do it kind of like the podcast style, like I did for the last one, where it's just, don't worry about watching this, just give it a listen. There's not going to be anything in terms of the video aspect of it, but overall I thought it was a really good card, and I went 4-1 on my predictions. I would have been 5-0 if not for Petr Yan having that, just not knowing what the rules are. Overall now I'm 5-3 on predictions, and I'm 2-2 in title fights. So getting into the main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya. Jan Blachowicz wins by a unanimous decision, and I think the focus should be on Jan Blachowicz. He's had a lot of disrespect in the lead up to this fight, and even afterwards. After he won, Adesanya got the first interview, and that never happens. The winner always gets the first interview. And it makes sense because this fight was made to build up Adesanya and to hopefully get that John Jones Adesanya fight, right? So I get where they're coming from with this, but still. Another example was the Helwani interview. If you look at the difference between theirs, Jan just got a regular Skype interview, but Israel's is all like super professional, lit, and all that type of stuff. And the point is, Jan needs his respect. Get this man his respect, please. And it's actually, he's very Stipe-esque in that manner, huh? He goes in as the underdog a lot, but he still gets the win. He overperforms. I don't even know if you want to say overperforms. It's just that, once again, he's just disrespected. Really. In terms of the fight itself, I think it was obvious that Jan won. And I think it could have been scored 48-47 or 49-46. I don't agree with the 10-8, but I think that you can make the argument that he won 4 rounds. He outstriked Adesanya in every round. And you could, make the argument, maybe 1 in 3 went to Adesanya. I honestly think you could give 1 to Jan. He landed more strikes, and you could make the argument he did more damage. The first round was really them feeling each other out, so it could go either way. But my point being, I think you could give Jan 4 rounds in this fight. I got the right guy in my prediction, not quite the right method. I had initially picked, I believe, a 3rd round submission, so I didn't get that. He did try submission in the round, didn't necessarily work out. As I said, he landed more than Izzy in every round. This fight was a chess match, and respecting each other's strengths. You could tell that he respected Izzy's speed and his striking capabilities, and Izzy respected Jan's power. Izzy's feints were somewhat effective. He got reactions out of Jan, but he never capitalized on it. He never really did anything with it. And granted, that is in part because Jan's reactions to it were very defensively responsible. He was putting his hands up, putting his legs up, whatever it was, you know what I mean? He checked leg kicks way more than Adesanya did too. One, Adesanya never really acted on the reactions of the feints, but also Blachowicz didn't necessarily give him looks for those. And that was another thing. I'm going on a whole nother thing, I guess, but it was really interesting in the fight that the commentators, man, the commentators were bad in this fight, particularly because of the feints. They were acting like Izzy was winning the fights from feints, and that's not how it works. It's, judging, like, the number one thing on judging is damage. Feints do no damage. The commentary on this fight was really bad, which sucks. I watched it with the commentary. I've also watched it a couple times without, because I remember watching it with my dad, and we were thinking, what are they saying? Like, they were saying, it was like 2nd round, 3rd round, Jan's got to do some. He's got to do some. He's in a hole, and it's like, what? He's been outstriking him every round, and arguably hitting the harder strikes. But whatever. I rest my case. Jan was also effective with feints, to be honest. You could argue that he beat Adesanya at his own game. As I said, it was a technical fight, and he outplayed him in that sense. You could say he was a little more willing to take the shots and commit to striking. But point being is, he was getting, people were saying Izzy was getting reactions out of Izzy's feints were getting reactions out of Jan, but Jan also has a history of reacting heavily to feints, but also Jan got a lot of reactions out of Izzy on his feints, so take that as you will, at least. He's proved, granted, I feel like this was already the case, but Jan's proved he's more than just a power puncher. That's what, he's known for. The people say the Polish power and all that, and yes, that's true, but granted, I've said it before. I think I might have said it in the prediction video that I believe he has more submissions than he has knockouts, right? So we already knew that he's more than just a power puncher, right? He has a ground game, but he can also win a technical striking fight, which is big. We had seen the growth from the Santos fight anyway, where he lost off of impatience, basically, but this was like, you could say the pure opposite of that he was patient throughout the fight, waited for his moments, and knew not to dive in and get himself knocked out in a counter strike. Even with the takedowns, those had to be perfectly timed, right? Because everyone knew that, you know, there was a good shot that he would try to take the fight to the ground, right? So you got to watch out for something catching you on a level change. But he timed his takedowns perfectly. The ones in the middle of the cage that he had, great takedowns. I would say that the weight played a role in the fight. I mean, obviously in the ground game, that's where it was most noticeable. When Jan got on top of Izzy, it did not feel like he was going to be able to get him off, particularly when he got in the mount late in the fight. Honestly, if there was a couple more minutes in that fight, Jan probably finishes Izzy there. Izzy did a good job keeping Jan out of full mount. You know, he kept him in, like, what, a half guard and half mount at times. Yeah, if Jan got to full mount earlier in the fight, he probably finishes that. The damage he started putting on looked pretty bad, and Izzy was not going to be able to get out of that position. So yeah, the weight definitely felt like it played a role there. That from the stand-up game, not necessarily, but from the ground game, that 20 pounds makes a difference in trying to get a guy off of you. You know what I mean? Yeah, as I said, Jan had great takedowns in the open. He exposed some, and he, you know, you can make the argument that with the open, you know, the open mat kind of takedowns that Jan hit on Izzy, he might have exposed some holes in his game, because there won't be a weight difference at middleweight. So, you know, you can make an argument that his BJJ will look a lot better, his ground game will look a lot better at middleweight, because there's not a guy who's insanely heavier than him, 20 pounds heavier than him, over him. But it didn't feel like he was doing a lot of active work from the bottom. But, you know, someone like Vettori could, you know, watch this fight and think he's got a good shot at a rematch with Adesanya. Looking forward, for Jan at least, it's pretty straightforward. Glover Teixeira is the next guy. He got passed over for this fight, and so it's good to see him getting a shot now, and that Jan is going to respect that, you know, and get him his fight. And then for Adesanya, it really depends on two fights coming up in April: Whitaker versus Gastelum and Till versus Vettori. In my opinion, the obvious choice should be Whitaker. He's the clear, like, next level guy. Like, I've said that Adesanya's on his own level. At middleweight, Adesanya's on his own level. And then it's, you know, Whitaker on his own level, and then it's like the rest of the division. You know, he beat Cannonier. He should have got the title shot after that. He should be the one to get it, but he might not. My guess is the best bet is probably the winner of Till versus Vettori. Adesanya said he wants to fight Till, and that's I think the only guy he hasn't fought out of like the top 4 or 5 that are close to getting a fight with him right now. The Vettori rematch could happen too if he wins that fight. If Till wins, it's definitely probably gonna be Till. Moving on to the co-main event, we had Amanda Nunes defeat Megan Anderson in the first round by submission, a armbar, I believe. And first off, Nunes is just on another level. She really is the women's GOAT. At least right now for featherweight, there does not seem to be competition for her, but in general, she's just on another level. She controlled the fight from the beginning, pressuring, and in terms of just the pressure, the pace, the striking, all of it, she controlled it. Anderson struggled to use her reach and size advantage at all in this fight. I thought she'd be able to use it a little bit, but she just didn't know what she was doing in there. It felt like, actually, the fight ended a lot faster than I expected, because I thought that Nunes would have to problem solve a little bit getting inside, and that Anderson would do something. Anderson seemed completely like she lost any sense of what to do after getting hit in this fight. Like, I don't know what there is to say about it, really, right? Like, Nunes is just that good. You know, I agree with the UFC maybe keeping featherweight open as long as Nunes wants to defend it and just taking challengers where they can find it. If they want to build the division, go for it. You know, maybe you can do like a tough season or something after. I know they want to do Ultimate Fighter, I think, for like welterweights right now, but, you know, in a season or two of Ultimate Fighter, you can maybe try and build up featherweight a little bit, but I don't know, it's hard to say. In terms of what's next, Nunes will likely return to bantamweight, as there's not really any contenders right now at featherweight. Juliana Pena's probably the best chance of an upcoming fight for her, because she had a fight with Holly Holm scheduled, and Holly Holm had to drop out of that. You know, Nunes didn't take much damage, so if they want her to fight soon, that would probably be the best bet. However, you could look at Shevchenko as well. A third Nunes-Shevchenko 3 is probably the most competitive fight that could be made for Amanda Nunes right now. For Anderson, I really don't know what's next. She completed her deal with the UFC, so currently I think she's a free agent. She said that they plan to get rid of the division, but as I said, it sounds like Dana White's going to keep it as long as Nunes wants to defend it. Maybe Anderson takes the cyborg route, and following a bad loss to Nunes, just goes over to Bellator. Other options could be PFL, you know, or maybe a return to Invicta. And finally, the last main fight I'm going to touch on in this video, Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. The controversial one. Well, I don't mean not controversial in the sense of who won, but there's controversy surrounding this one. This was the only fight I got wrong because of that disqualification. Aljamain Sterling becomes the new UFC bantamweight champion by route of disqualification, as Petr Yan uses an illegal knee, and I believe late in the 4th round. Yeah, as I said, there's been a lot of controversy on this fight. Obviously, it was an illegal knee. I don't think anyone's, arguing against that. I don't think Sterling should have got the belt, though. I think that this should have just been vacated. I think you can give Sterling the win on a disqualification, that's fine, but I don't think that the belt should be won off of a disqualification. To me, that just seems wrong. I know that, he's putting a lot of work and stuff. I think that in a case of a disqualification in a championship fight, you should vacate the belt and you do a rematch or something similar to that in terms of determining who's the next champion. And it does looking over the footage, it does feel like he played it up a little bit, and a lot of people are getting on him about that, throwing the belt on the ground in the cage, and then there's pictures coming out of him wearing it and smiling with his friends and family. But I get it, because you're with your friends and family, so you might not even be happy, but you put on a face because you want them to be happy, right? So I don't want to dive too deep into that. Like there's a lot of people who were like pressed about that stuff. I thought the fight was 2-1, potentially going into 3-1 in the favor of Jan. He was definitely winning this fight, and he was growing, better as the fight went on. I think you can make the argument he might have found a finish in the 5th round if, had it gone on to that, because I believe it was late in the 4th when the fight ended. Sterling looked good in the beginning, but it was an impossible pace to keep up that he had. He had an insane pace early on, and you could tell there was probably an adrenaline dump in there as well. So he was crashing in like the later rounds, and I don't know if he would have survived the championship rounds, in the sense of round 5. Like, he was doing enough to get Jan to put his hands up, but Jan also in this fight almost proved that he doesn't even have to be an insanely heavy pressure fighter. Like, his style is naturally, the pressure, but he proved that he could sit there, absorb pressure, and just be a sniper, right? Catch you. I mean, in the first round, he dropped Aljo, which was like completely opposite of how the round was going, and he just caught Aljo and dropped him. And I think it was also really interesting. He had his way with Sterling in takedowns. He was way more effective in takedowns than Sterling was. And, I was thinking about this, and I think in part maybe Sterling didn't mind the fight going to the ground, so he maybe wasn't trying to defend the takedowns as easily. But granted, it was a lot of like trips as well that Jan was really effective on. But it also, I think he showed off that he is a really good defensive grappler, and not just grappler in general, but his defensive grappling in this fight was pretty good. And so yeah, his grappling's for real too. I also think, going back a little bit real quick to the knee situation, as I'm going through my notes right now, there was no excuse for Jan to not know the rules and that the knee was illegal. Your job is fighting, you gotta know that, right? Though it does sound like there's a bit of miscommunication coming from his corner in that regard. I think a rematch for these two would be really interesting. I think that Jan would be a heavy favorite. Maybe not heavy favorite, but a solid favorite, if not heavy favorite. Minus 200 or something like that. Makes sense moving into a rematch, because he was quite clearly winning the fight, and I don't think he would have lost the fight. I think he lost. Disqualification was probably the only way he was losing that fight, other than maybe a submission late. And yeah, moving forward, the only, the only move that makes sense is a rematch between these two. Aljo was trying to tease a fight with Cejudo, but no, that doesn't make sense. You gotta, I don't want to say he didn't, I don't want to say you have to properly win the belt. I'm not gonna go that route and strip the belt away from him in that sense, but you gotta go, really prove that this belt is yours now. Some final other little notes: Islam Makhachev did his thing again. He's now up to rank 11, and he's ready for top opponents. I don't know if you give him upwards of a top 7 guy right now, but really anyone from 15 to 10, I feel like you can give him, give him that, and then if he wins that fight, then you give him top 7, 8, 9 guys, even upwards into the top 5. And then finally, Santos vs. Rakic, the opening fight. It's a bit of a dud in comparison to what it could have been, but now Rakic is probably one fight away from a title shot. He's at rank 2 right now. Maybe he fights the winner of Reyes, Prochazka, but you would think that right now he's on track to maybe get that next title shot after Glover in the light heavyweight division. With that being said, we've covered everything in this video. If y'all enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, comment, anything that you thought about the video or anything else you want to see from me. And I really appreciate the support from y'all. That's about everything, so y'all have a good one.